Hello, I'm back here once again with another video. I thought today I'd do something a little bit different. Talk about what Uriah Heep means to me. Now, Uriah Heep, talking to my dad back when I was like 8 or 9, Uriah Heep was one of my dad's favorite bands that he talked about and mentioned the song Lady in Black. And it wasn't really until I'm like, oh, okay, that's for school assignment, whatever. It wasn't until a few years later, probably about a decade later, move out on my own, start my life, living out on my own, working all the time, that I thought, you know what, I'll go through, I'll listen to stuff, try to find some new music. So I figured, you know what, I'll give Uriah Heep a shot. And I did, and musically, I've never really looked back. Now, at the time I heard Lady in Black, it was around the same time as the release of Wake the Sleeper, which I listened to a couple songs off that album. I thought, you know what, that's not bad. But it was also around the same time I was really getting into Guns N' Roses and Megadeth at the same time. So it kind of took a musical backseat, it seemed. But around the same time, I also was having a lot of health problems, thyroid out of whack, bronchitis, had a couple cancer scares where they thought, well, maybe you have cancer. So I went through that, and around that time, I was just depressed and miserable, which I think anyone going through the situation could feel the same way. And I do suggest if you ever do feel that way, talk to somebody about it because it does help. And I admit I was miserable to be around, but the one solace and one love I really had in life was music. And around this time, I really started to get into Uriah Heep. I started listening to Demons and Wizards, that album, Circle of Hands, Rainbow Demon, The Wizard, everything off that album was really damn good. And it's short, which to me was like, wow, that's actually not bad. So then I went on to The Magician's Birthday, kind of the same feel, same thing. Sunrise, Magician's Birthday, Echoes in the Dark, Tales, Evil Eye, stuff like that. But the album that really solidified it for me was Look at Yourself, the album that came before Demons and Wizards. Great record, I have to say. It changed my life. Now, it starts off with Look at Yourself, the title track, which I'm like, oh, okay, that's good. But for me, it starts with I Want to Be Free. It really is a great track. July Morning, once again, another great track. Tears in My Eyes, I love that song to death. Shadow of Grief is heavy as heavy can get. But for me, the song that solidified it for me was What Should Be Done. The oddball, the ugly duckling that's kind of on the album that doesn't really seem like it fits at all, at least for what they were doing. But it's such a good track, and it's one of my all-time favorite Uriah Heep tracks, especially the lyrics to it. So you think you found a way of living that prevents you losing any sleep. Just that type of stuff. It was such a good song. Really good song. Love Machine ended the album. I swear I went through a whole copy of this album. I think I've pretty much can do this whole album just off by listening to it, which my wife probably gets really sad that I actually will pretty much sing out the whole album as it's going through, but is what it is. And then I began discovering more Uriah Heep, Return to Fantasy. High and Mighty has another one of my favorite Uriah Heep tracks. Weep in Silence, to me, one of the best guitar solos Uriah Heep's ever done is on that album. I love the guitar playing on that song. Just speaks to me in the soaringness of it. And then finished out the 70s with some alright albums. Around this time, I had no idea up until a few years ago that John Lawton was on the Firefly, Innocent Victim, and Fallen Angel albums, which Lucifer Friends fans, which was another band I started to discover around that time, huge fan of. And once I found out he was on that, I'm like, holy crap. Love his voice. Great voice. That's one thing I'll say. And yeah, so around the time I was just discovering Heep and listening to it over and over and over again. 80s Heep came. I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of it, but it's like, it is what it is. I'm like, they had to do what they had to do to survive as a band, which wasn't a terrible thing. I made through Different World, which I don't listen to very often, but when I do, it's usually during a time where I'm listening to the whole discography in a row, and it's like, well, I can't skip the album. I have to listen to it. Not my favorite Heap album, probably in my opinion the worst, but it is what it is. Then going through the 90s and the 2000s, and around that time, then Into the Wild came out, which I really enjoyed. Into the Wild is, in my opinion, one of Uriah Heep's most criminally underrated albums. Then you get Outsider and Living the Dream. But before Living the Dream came out, I got to do something that I never thought I'd ever get to do. See Uriah Heep live. And I have to say, it wasn't a big venue. It was a small, maybe there was 1,000 people there, if lucky. But you could tell one thing about it. They loved Uriah Heep. And it was full of Heat fans because you could tell throughout the entire concert, you can hear them around me singing, headbanging along to it, just having a good time. And I'll always remember this. This lady came up to me and asked me, "Oh, so you like Uriah Heep? What's your favorite Uriah Heep song?" And so I told her What Should Be Done. It was the first one that just came to mind, so just told her. If I probably had to think more about it, I could probably give more of a list, but it was the first one that came to mind. And so I hear this lady go over to these other guys, and it's like, "Oh, what's that guy like?" And she's like, "Is he a fan or not?" And she looked at him and said, "That guy likes What Should Be Done. He's a true Uriah Heep fan." And they're like, "What should be done?" And it's like, he told me it's the deep cut off a Look at Yourself. And they're just looking at it like, that guy must be a fan. Because not many people, I think, would say What Should Be Done is their favorite song. But that night, I've seen Kiss live, I've seen Megadeth live, I've seen Roger Waters live. I have to say that that is one of my favorite concerts I've ever seen in my life. I really do. It's minimal, it's nothing, but it's that intimate feeling of seeing these guys you never thought you'd ever get to see in a setting like that, surrounded by fans. I went seeing Guns N' Roses live, which is another band I love. But the part that pissed me off is all these people around me, other than their hits, knew nothing. So when they played songs like Patience or Coma or some of their other songs they played, they're like, "What's this? What's the name of this?" And it just pissed me off because I'm like, I know tickets were expensive, but you mean to tell me you couldn't have at least listened to some of this before you came here, so you don't make a stupid statement like that. But anyway, that's really is Uriah Heep for me. It's a experience that I love so much. Like, this band means so much to my musical listening experience. Like, they're one of my top 3 bands of all time. And it's a band that no matter what stage in life I go through, I can listen to. Now, it's kind of funny is that, like, I finished this, my dad introduced it to me. He passed away last winter. It's really been great listening to this band because it always reminds me of him. Like, whenever I need a reminder to what stuff he'd say and stuff, it's like, you know what, Dad would have really liked this shit. But anyway, that's my thoughts and opinions on this. Like, this is just what Uriah Heep means to me. It's not meant to be a video that's out to get like a gazillion views. It's just more of my personal feelings on this band and why I love this band so much. Whether it's the guitar playing, the keyboards, the drumming, all this stuff. They're kind of like that underdog band that you just want to root for. But anyway, this is me here signing out. Peace.